America first!
Yeah, baby.
America first!
Yeah, baby. I think taxation is extortion via coercion that results in slave labor.
I agree.
Amen, brother.
Hey, hell yeah.
Will you be voting for, against, or not voting for the Delhi levy for the EMT fire department?
I'll vote to approve it.
Your vote to approve it. And then Israel first or America first?
It's America first for me.
That's the right answer.
Okay.
Would you be for or against the Delhi fire department levy?
Yeah, I would be for that.
You be for that. And then America first or Israel first?
Of course, America.
America? Thank you, sir. For or against the Delhi EMT fire department tax levy? America first or Israel first?
America.
I'll do America first or Israel first?
Oh, America first.
Amen, brother.
Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
You have a blessed day.
I was recording and I asked them if they're for or against the fire department levy, and they said against. Are you for or against the fire department EMT levy?
I'm gonna look at it again.
Fair enough. Still 2 questions for my YouTube channel about the fire levy that's going around is one of the questions.
I don't know anything about it.
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt. You'll have a good day. You look like a happy group. Israel first or America first?
America.
Amen, brother. I appreciate you. For or against the fire department EMT levy?
I'd rather not.
Fair enough. And then America first or Israel first?
America.
Amen. Thank you for... Yeah, I think that'd be good.
Anything I have to read or?
I don't think so. I mentioned to you, wow, I can't hardly read this. I think I mentioned to you, we're here today because you're gracious enough to spend time. We have a tax levy coming up. And I think it's fair to say you're going to most likely be
33, injured person, Delhi post-acute, medic 33, cross of Bailey Drive and Hillside Avenue, 5999 Bender Road.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's okay. Anytime you gotta
100%.
go, I totally understand.
Only on the big ones.
So there's a levy coming up
Mm-hmm.
to have a mill for the fire department EMT, and you gave a presentation at trustee meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Encourage everybody to look at that has an interest in it.
Yes.
Gonna try and keep this down to 30 minutes is what I think I told you, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
So if I start going over, you know I'm a rambler. And with that, I wanted to give you the opportunity just to do an opening statement. Maybe you could give the website. I think there's a website dedicated to this, and the date of the levy, if you know when the date is of the vote and all that kind of.
Sure. So it's officially posted on the fire department's page on the Delhi Township website. So it's www.delhi.oh.us. Go to the fire department, and then it is the first page. It's titled 3.2 mil 2026 levy, something to that effect. And there's a fact sheet that's presented below it. It does have my levy presentation link at the top of it, which refers back to my fire levy presentation that occurred at the last trustees meeting. So all that information is in there. I think one of the things that we want to accomplish the most as a fire department is certainly we abide by the transparency, trying to get as much information out there that a voter could take all the information and make the best decision for them, their own personal decision. If you leave things unanswered, if there's misinformation, misunderstanding, you leave yourself open to a lot of misinterpretation on how things work, how things are funded, and try to do my best to summarize it. It's not overly complicated, because it's the hardest thing to do is to find people's level of understanding without just throwing a bunch of numbers at them that just don't make sense, using foreign terminology and trying to explain to it. Because I think when people really understand the calculations that are involved with property tax assessment and valuation, and then how it's taxed, it confuses a lot of people. And so that they understand, naturally you would assume if your property values increase, the amount of money coming in from those funds increases as well, and that's just not the case.
With the fire department? or in general?
Many levies,
With levies, it's not the
specifically as it relates to the fire department. What I've tried to get people to understand is just like in the previous levy, I think it was $70 per 100,000 is what it was the last levy. So in 2024, the money that came in 24, 25, and this year, that was voter approved for $70 per 100,000. So to make it simple, if the property is $100,000, the voter approved $70 each of those years. No matter how much their property increased, they roll back into what they call effective millage. There's voted millage and there's effective millage. They roll it back each year depending on how much the property increases, so that the fire department gets no more and no less than that $70 that the voter approved for those years. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, other than some minor exceptions where you do get some money coming through the general fund on some exception things, but it's for a smaller percent of the budget. And at some point, we'll probably get into the personnel and how it takes a big bite. I wanted to give a couple opening statements as well, but I want to make sure we get out there when that vote is actually going to happen. Do you know off the top of your head when the vote is?
So early voting, we're already in the process of early voting.
Okay.
The in-person actual ballot day is May 5th.
May 5th, okay.
2026.
So I tried to prepare this. I'm working off 2 hours sleep, so please bear with me. So in my opening statement, I'd like to summarize the key points, or you already did that. That was your opening statement. My stance, Chief, is I want to be clear that I've done my research. I've watched the meeting. I saw a lot of it in person. I believe your presentation on the facts and the department's needs is true. I won't challenge in this debate 99%, maybe anything of what you're saying is not being true. And I want to also state that I hold your team in the highest regard. If I'm going to be forced to pay for these services, it's your team. It's a team that you put together that I want to be paying for. However, I'm not here to dispute your numbers or the budget gap. I'm here to elevate the discussion.
Okay.
And what I'll be doing is challenging the moral foundation and the authority that supports the levy system itself. My core foundation is this: taxation is extortion via coercion that results in slave labor. Now, the extortion is the hardest part of that on my side to argue fits, because in the extortion definition, they basically describe extortion, then they put illegally. So it's only extortion if it's illegal. So the government, in essence, what they do in their systems is they legalize a lot of things that are criminal in a lot of other senses. And qualified immunity would be another example of that in police departments. So the way I look at that is taxation and extortion via coercion. Coercion is the threats and violence of either loss of property or some kind of physical force against you. And resulting in slave labor, the way I look at that is the first definition came up on the internet is slave labor is labor that is not adequately rewarded. So I think who determines whether the labor is adequately rewarded or not? And all infinite options, but I break it down into two pure civilizations, a free society and a slave society. In a free society, all stakeholders coming to the table do so freely and with the ability to freely walk away from the deal being offered or negotiated if they feel they're not adequately rewarded in that deal.
Kind of like collective bargaining.
Kind of like just individual rights. I'm not sure about collective bargaining, but I do touch on it in here at some point. In a slave society, what happens is one or more of the stakeholders comes to the table with whatever level of threats and or violence and or loss of property rights they need in order to force one or more of the other stakeholders to accept a deal that those stakeholders would never accept if they lived in a free society. I believe you yourself are probably paying in part on a federal level for the Epstein sex scandal and the cover-up of it. You're probably paying for the murder of people in Ukraine and Russia, murder of people in the Middle East, and you may not pay for those things if you had an individual right to choose on an itemized basis whether to pay for those or not.
Sure.
And that again is the foundation of the argument and the things I want to touch on today. So, if Ohio passed a law allowing a slave levy where the majority could vote to force the minority into physical labor, support would be very low, be very zero. So if we had the option to pass, the trustees would never go to the citizens and say, we want to put on the ballot a slave labor levy. But the reality is when you strip down most levies, they all strip down into, based on the foundation I laid earlier, they all strip down into slave labor.
So who is the quote unquote the labor in the equation? Who is the slave labor? Is it the citizen?
Generally, it is the taxpayer.
The taxpayer.
It can be the citizen when you get into different things like fees and fines, or hey, you got
it's
to pay for
typically
a
the
dog
citizens.
collar.
We all pay taxes, so yes,
Yep.
I understand. So you're saying that if they passed a law, the state said that the local government could pass a law for slave labor.
Yep, where
And they
where-
did it-
where I
they
could
did it
force,
that way.
I could force you to come over and for pennies on the dollar, work a whole day picking up all crap out of my yard, and that'd be legal because they passed a slave labor thing.
I got it.
It's a radical concept, but it starts tying into all these taxes.
Mm-hmm.
In some regard, and to different extents, are abusive to different extents, and are slave labor to different extents. And I don't want to minimize in any way, shape, or form any more intense labor and slave labor of the past. What happened with some of the Africans that we brought over here and just the slave industry throughout history. There's definitely more intuitively obvious types of trade. But with this, even with the signs that we see around Delhi, I see nothing but support signs. But we know from the meeting and from Facebook, there's at least some people that are also against the levy. You don't see that. Have you seen any signs that are against the levy?
I have not.
And that's the power of the government for different reasons I won't get into. You all have an ability to market things.
Who?
You folks in government, you folks that are for more government, because the signs are already ready from the last levy. You got people that work here that are willing to put the signs in their yard or their family or loved ones. You got people that support government. But you don't have that organization on the other side. I would say what we're happening right here is going to be the greatest public defense against the tax levy. And I thought you laid out a great thing. I'm going to get into some things that are law-based. And
So let me clarify. The fire department, Delhi Township, no local governmental agency funds those signs, the campaign, any of that stuff. Even in my capacity as fire chief, when I'm doing a presentation, I'm not up there saying vote against it, vote for it. I'm providing the information. So the township legally, the fire department legally cannot have people on payroll working to campaign for the levy. So I don't want this to get confused that the fire department has used any public funds in any capacity. Whether it's the people employed for the organization, they're not on the clock. If they're doing this on their off time like any other citizen, they can do it. So we're very staunch in creating that separation. We don't have levy meetings on duty. We do not discuss levy on duty. We don't want to blur the lines about what our capacity is as a public servant versus campaigning and trying to persuade people to do something. So there is a separation of both funds and employees in that.
That's
venture.
a great point. I think there is a natural system, whatever it is, that hey, you see each other here and there. Maybe you know, you say, hey, can we stay after work for 5 minutes off the clock and talk about this levy, and maybe we can come together. Whereas the folks that I want on my side, a lot of them are strangers, you know what I mean? And even if I got all my buddies and everybody I know, or even if I went door to door and said, hey, can you put up this sign? You know, I have to come up with that money and those things like that. And so I think there's a lot of times more organized, because sometimes the folks working on those things, those levies, they're folks that are working on other things that are government related. You know, they're going to be the same folks that may chime in and willing to put a sign in their yard for the police department levy and other tax raises. I want to make a marker here because I want to challenge myself and go out of order. And I want to go to one of the legal aspects. And so this wasn't brought up in the meeting, and I'm not going to present it.
Okay.
I'm not going to present it as a solution, but I think that it's more important that people are informed about these things so that they know, hey, these are options. And it also goes to the core of the argument or the side I'm trying to articulate.
So what options are we talking?
Has to do with Delhi Township's ability to redistrict. And are you familiar with the ability to redistrict? Your ability to do it with Delhi Township trustee approval?
In what capacity?
So my understanding at a high level is that Ohio gives groups smaller than Delhi Township the ability. I think that the solution ultimately is individual ability to opt out of levies, opt out of taxes. Like everything else, we don't want the service, we opt out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Ohio recognizes that, as I understand it, to a degree. I can't find the ORC code right now, but it's 505 something, which has to do with districting. And what it means is that, as I understand it, if I go to all my neighbors, I don't know if this is called Cottonwood or whatever over here, but if I go to all my neighbors and we all sign a petition unanimously saying we don't want to pay that levy, we're due without the service, and we're sign a waiver so that you don't have that liability, township. If you redistrict like that based on that petition and the trustees pass it, that's a legal opt-out for that neighborhood or group or that geographic area, even though we're in Delhi.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it no longer is part of the township?
It is part of the township. It's just a separate fire district.
Okay.
And what it does is it allows us to opt out of those taxes with township approval. And I'm curious if what I'm saying is true. And I got a certain threshold of my neighbors, let's just say 100%, to sign a petition saying, we don't want the levy. Same as me though, we appreciate the service and we have to pay for them. We definitely want Doug's team. But we don't, and we brought it to you and the trustees. Is that something you would support? And I understand I gave no preparation information to you to prepare for these, so I think it would be just as respectful if you said I'd have to look into that or something. But if you do have an answer on the fly.
Sure. I mean, I've not heard of it. I understand fire districts. In my understanding of fire districts, the way they work is where you have multiple jurisdictions that can't provide the service directly. You've heard of Columbia Township?
I have not.
So Columbia Township's over on the east side. I think they're a good example. They're a township who contracts with a district, a taxing district, to provide just fire protection. Police is separate, all the other different things. But they don't have enough area within them because most townships have cities in them. So Springfield Township, it has, I want to say, 4 or 5 big cities in it. Forest Park, that's its own taxing and service district, but it's in the Springfield Township. And Green Hills is a village. It's its own separate taxing district, but it's in the township.
And when you're saying in the township, meaning it's also under the same governing body, such as a trustee body?
No, they actually take on their own representation. So Green Hills has its own,
36.
they have their own council, elected officials, they provide their own, but they physically are located in a township. If they can't financially pay for services, let's say they go into some fiduciary or financial struggle. I know Addiston is in the same deal. They can't provide the services directly as a city or a village. They have a chance to go back and merge into the township. It will fall back into township
What I'm
government.
discussing is something different where Delhi would remain under the same governance body of the trustees and the board, but we would be divided in terms of fire districts. And the division would primarily functionally just be that they wouldn't pay levy services because they waived out and all that, and it was approved by the trustees, and everyone else still would. And then services may also modify based on that within that particular fire district. Is that something that you would support going to the trustees with if I got my whole neighborhood to sign petitions?
Me, I would have a moral struggle with it, and I'll tell you where I'm coming from.
Yep.
During Cincinnati's history as a volunteer fire department, there were multiple fire companies. They weren't all under the same umbrella. And their financial incentive to put out fires was based on recouping funds from insurance. And back in the day, if I had an insurance company that said my building needs to be protected by fire protection, I'd put up this symbol that would show, it'd be a placard on the outside of my building showing that I am covered by such and such insurance agency. And this is like the 1800s. During that period of time, people would see fire, they'd ring the fire bell, and you'd have these fire companies. It just, my station's here and here. They're not the same team. They are running as fast as they can to put out that fire because it's insured. And whoever puts out that fire gets the insurance claim on it. That's how they recouped. They weren't paid except for putting out fires.
Is what you're suggesting is that if you did support that, that those neighbors may
here's
go
where
out
I'm going with it. I know I'm taking the long way around.
No worries.
So when you had fire companies that wouldn't respond to buildings that weren't insured, volunteer companies, they were like, I'm not getting any money out of that, let it burn. Or they were getting into fights in the front yard because they both wanted to put it out. There was no collective good that came out of it. Whether you were insured or not, you were not getting the same response. Where I come from as basically a service director, because that's what I do. I provide a service to single out folks, whether it's race, religion, creed, whether you mow your lawn or not, whether you have complaints against you or not, whether it's you or another individual, whether I like you or don't. I can't morally, we don't filter who we respond and take care of. We don't ask them, are you a resident of Delhi Township? Are you a citizen of the U.S.? We don't distinguish in that.
But there is something you do that's kind of similar to that. Because not only does the state of Ohio recognize what I just described, even though you wouldn't support it on moral grounds, you kind of do that on an individual basis. If I understand correctly, there's a slice of the ambulance services that taxpayers do not pay for. And when you show up with the ambulance, you give the consumer an option to opt in or opt out of the service. And if they opt in, they're going to be responsible to pay for it, and on an individual level, or sometimes insurance covers it, but it's still the individual's responsibility ultimately.
So with EMS billing, the state allows us to bill the insurance company, not you directly. And if the insurance company says we're only paying 75% of that bill, that's the insurance company's rule. You are a resident of Delhi, you're provided that service, that 25% gap,
Yep.
you're not required to pay.
Okay.
We do not go after that. So I'll give you an example, and I'm just going to use a round number for the number of claims that we bill. So if I do 3,500 EMS calls in a year, I transport maybe 2,400 of them. If I bill for those 2,400 transports to residents in Delhi, the insurance pays what they pay, and it's all varying level. It's Medicaid, Medicare, private insurance, whatever. We write off, like last year, we wrote off close to $300,000. I think it was like $290,000 was written off, meaning we had the legal authority to bill for what the insurance company did not cover, but because they are a resident, and they pay taxes, it was written off.
Do you
There's
do that
no
for
collections.
residents only?
Only residents.
Only residents, so you actually do have a collection mechanism for those services when it's a non-resident.
Correct.
Okay, and me, if I'm a resident and I don't have insurance, so the full 100 burden is on me, you would not collect on that,
No.
right? Okay.
Not for transport and not for just showing up.
And that's good information. It's not the information I was seeking, but I think it's good information. I didn't want to interrupt you because it's good information. But the angle I'm getting at is that we recognize that with regard to some services, you do bill a person that's responsible for it. And then if they don't pay you for whatever reason, you're billing the insurance company, not the person, but same concept. If they don't pay you for whatever reason, you don't go after them. Now, that sounds to me like you just pointed out that it could be a partial solution. We'd have to dig into the numbers. Do you know roughly, again, maybe you already stated, how much that is a year that we wrote
About
off?
290,000 was written off.
290,000 that we could take off of the burden of the tax. 290,000 less than that we'd be able to take off because it's going to be overhead and stuff to collections.
Correct.
Higher collection agency, but we could take that burden off the taxpayer and put it on the people that acquired those services, the insurance companies, but they're now getting richer. It kind of sounds like, I don't want to say it's a fraud scheme, but it sounds like the wrong person's benefiting from this decision we've made. And this new information from, but so I appreciate that. I'd like to dig into that more on my own at some point. But what I'm really getting at with this is that in some areas, in this area in particular, you all give us an option to opt out of it. And we never know where the insurance companies are going in the future. If you smoke more, you might pay more. If you get a lot of EMT services, will you be paying more in the future? And then, and why wouldn't they charge more if when they're dealing with a government agency like us, we're just writing them off? But I want to point out that you give us that individual option, and that expense goes at an individual level, individual decision. So the fact that Ohio gives us that option on that level, they could give us that option on the all services level. And just from an individual perspective, because almost everything outside of government is like this. People are serviced on an individual, even my trash pickup. They ride around, they skip the ones that aren't customers, they pick up the ones that are. How feasible would it be, and would you support me in a lobbying effort if I wanted to empower the individual to make the decision with regard to things like tax levies or fire department levies, where you could really service the people? You have a guy here that I think articulated pretty clearly that y'all are awesome. You do a great job. If I have to pay, I want you. But it contradicts my core value system of individual rights. And so by allowing that individual, if we allow that as a society, and this has been a debate of free men for a long time in history, centuries. If we allow that kind of flexibility, then you would be truly servicing the people that want to be serviced by you in a voluntaristic way, meaning they voluntarily, without coercion or threat, no threat against property rights, association rights, or anything, choose to do business with those services, and you provide them. And see, when you get away with that, from that, the problem is that government rarely contains itself. And when you don't have the freedom of choice, government ultimately will spend your money on a bunch of stuff you don't want. And there isn't a company out there that can do that outside of government that I know of. Now we have to make compromises and stuff. But is that something you would support on? And let me just preface it with this as well. If I have on $100,000 with this new levy, what is it, 133 a year?
112 per 100,000.
I'm sorry, 112 a year. So that 112, if I'm one of the more lower class folks in terms of finances in Delhi, and I have to decide whether I'm going to put 112 of this year into is roughly a week or two of groceries. It's an electric bill. It's other things. The core question is, law aside, because everything y'all are doing, I believe, is legal. Law, because that's what I'm challenging, the moral foundation of the law. What gives Delhi the moral authority to do what is a socialistic principle, to take money from someone against their free will, conditionally, and then give it to someone else when they want to spend it on groceries or to pay their mortgage this month or something else, and you want to spend it on something that is analytically just as important, right in that same field. You're wanting to save lives. They're wanting to not be homeless with their kids. And this may affect a smaller population in Delhi because we're a fairly well-to-do community. But as you start seeing in Cincinnati, they get horrible run times, horrible, but they're still paying the taxes. And there's no accountability where the individual living in Cincinnati that are paying those taxes for horrible runtime and services, it's atrocious, you could almost say, have very little choice. They can give up a huge chunk of their life and fight the power, but they can't do what they could do anywhere else and say, damn it, so-and-so spit in my sandwich again when I went through the fast food restaurant. And I'm going to go back tomorrow because I'm a sucker for it. No, you freely walk away because I'm advocating for a free society. And I love, Doug, I think you have a high moral ground and stuff, and you're in a tough position in this debate or discussion. But you're advocating for things that are, in my mind, slavery, oppression, socialistic values, and things that are anti-American in those respects. And if you think about the evolution of how we got to where we got to being able to have a township do a levy, I want to take a step back because I threw a lot out there at you. I kind of
trying to digest some of what you're saying.
I want to give you a chance just to respond to that, and then also after you respond to that, I want to do a time check and try and be respectful of our time. And I do want to take 2 minutes past something by you.
So you had mentioned services within the city of Cincinnati, and heavily their public safety is funded through income tax. So what you have here in Delhi is our only source of funding is property tax. But because we're lumped in with, could be the township's general fund, it could be your property tax, schools, other services, MRDD, the zoo. There's a lot of county level as well that are lumped in to your property taxes. So I know direct service in Delhi Township from the fire department is a small capacity of that. But I also believe you're not in a situation where you don't have taxation without representation, because particularly as it relates to the taxes you're paying against the services being provided, your elected officials represent that stopgap measure. The fire department did not. I have no capacity as a fire department to put on a ballot initiative. It has to be approved by the politicians.
I think that's a propagandist thing, because you're speaking to me, and I know you're speaking about the people in general, but I don't think that the board that's up there right now represent me, and I don't think they represent a lot of people in this community from a values perspective.
They can't represent
from a legal
100%
perspective.
Because not everybody will vote for those individuals represented.
That's why I'm for individual rights.
But they are supposed to represent your needs collectively, all 30,000 residents. That's what that board is formed to do. The state says you have to have local representation to provide the services to Delhi Township. That is your stopgap measure. Those are the folks that are elected by you directly. It may not be, you may not be in the majority or minority depending on how you voted, but they represent your ideals in presenting
They don't even know my ideals,
services.
Doug. They could never represent my ideals because they don't know them. And when you combine, even though you all do it off clock or whatever, when you combine the power in the network system of governments, that's why when I go here, I think you're going to see that the signs in support of this levy, and compared to the signs that don't support it, which I've seen zero, that ratio in and of itself doesn't reflect the people, because it looks like 0 people are against it. And what it reflects is the ability for government individuals and governments in general to come together in an organized fashion, some of them work together, to put on a campaign, even in the trustee meeting. Because I came a little bit late, there was no voice against. Your voice was a good voice for, even though you weren't, it just happened naturally that way. And there wasn't any discussion about individual rights, no discussion about districts. There's something called an inside levy where you could get a little bit more money. I don't think it's a solution, so it's kind of low prioritized. But an inside levy allows the trustees to pass a levy without a vote from the citizens. Bad idea. Never would advocate for it.
Would not fly.
But what is a good idea is that when we start asking the citizens for more money, when they're already taxed at one of the historically higher rates because of the values of the houses going up, even though fire department don't get it, we're already maxed out in terms of what historically we paid, and now we have to pay more because of the way government set up this system.
Do you have a general? Okay, I know typically when we've talked, you're coming from the angle of I want my tax dollars, if I have to pay them, to go for the services that I want. However, are you advocating something in the sense that we need to look at collectively as the state of Ohio how we tax property and real estate? Is the mechanism wrong? Are we taxing too many things under property tax and that's why it's so high? Is there another state that by their constitution does it something differently and stuff?
So the power brokers in America have done a great job of evolving our constitution and the legal system into a way that's really screwing over the American citizen. When 75% of us can't afford rent month to month, that's a reflection of a leadership in government that has failed us. I sat in front of the C.O. Harrison the other day with my Guy Fawkes mask, a peace sign, and when they had their windows down, I said, government has failed us. And I was amazed at the positive feedback I was getting. And when someone said, gave me the weird look, I said, I'm talking about the Epstein class. And here's the thing in Ohio, this gets a little involved so what I'm advocating for is, and so on the inside mill levy that we wouldn't vote on, the trustees would just pass. It's not whether it's a good idea or bad idea. Like you said early in the discussion, it's important that as a citizenry we're informed. And I thought that was a shortcoming of the Delhi Township government to not inform us. If that was an option, that's a bad option. And so ultimately, I think what would be good is that we either had no taxes or minimal taxes. At one time, there wasn't an income tax. I think times there's been what they call it, a hereditary tax or whatever, on and off. But taxation, if you believe in the philosophy that I believe in, that taxation is extortion via coercion that results in slave labor, then most all of it, if not all of it, is something you want to get rid of. But you kind of got to pick and choose where you can do that and try and point out that, hey, you're giving us these options here with the EMT in that regard, and you're at the benefit of the insurance company, at the downfall of the taxpayer, but you're not doing it over here. And there's a lot of things that go into this where I would challenge you if we had the time of where do you draw the limit and things like that. But the key thing is where do these folks get the moral authority? Because you talked about the collective good, and there's a lot on that. People talk about, on your side of the fence, the social contract a lot of times. I never agreed or signed a social contract, so somebody else already agreed for me.
Right.
And the thing is that
there's just a lot
when we
of
get
things.
away from those individual rights, one of the things that happens with elderly people, and it's a real thing, and it's part of the conversation of why folks like Vivek Ramaswamy running for governor is in his campaign running on, I'm going to roll back taxes. It's why legislators are seriously looking at getting rid of the real estate taxes and putting it somewhere else. And so these conversations are happening, but they're all Band-Aids for a solution. They're all Band-Aids that aren't solving the problem of slave labor. They're all Band-Aids. And I'm
So
trying
even
the problem
if the
of
tax
slave
went
labor.
away altogether, you said that doesn't fix it?
Yeah, if you can get rid of taxes altogether, it should fix it. Now, does it make a perfect society? No. But what it does is it gives me the option that when I see I can either save this life because I have a mechanism to get somebody that's trained professional there 2 minutes earlier or 5 minutes earlier, or I can apply it to my son who might have whatever that's a life-threatening injury, or I'm trying to struggle to keep my house so I'm not homeless or get kicked out. Any of those things, The fact that you all have whatever it is, I don't know if it's a gall or whatever, to take the moral stand to assume that we give you money, that has a greater collective good than what the individual would have spent that money on. That's very subjective. Whether that money that $112 goes to save a life because you're there 5 minutes earlier, or whether it goes to save someone from getting kicked out of their home, which has its own ripple effects as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we find that generally government is not an entity that can be trusted, even at the Delhi level. If you're following the bus story that I told you I thought I was going to might get arrested for, what you're going to find out is that I'm getting several different stories from Delhi. I'm trying to get file a complaint for them to enforce law. That they're telling me they don't know if they can enforce this law or they don't. Call Green Township. Seems like they can. I call down the prosecutor's office because there's something called an affidavit complaint where I can skip the police department. It's there for reasons. And I can swear and then have a prosecutor, a judge, or someone like that look at it. Call the prosecutor's office. Can I do this? No. This is the service we're getting from government. These are just off the top of my head. I ran into that school bus not following ORC law, allegedly. Certainly not following best practice busing, allegedly. There was child safety endangerment going on there, allegedly. And I'm getting a half solution response from Oak Hill Schools. I'm tangenting a lot here. And I didn't want to do that too much, but I want to start rounding it up. I do want to give you last word, but I just want to check some things. Because I mentioned that I would be posting this unedited, and I want to do that for the most part. I want to pass a couple things by you.
Yeah.
I want to possibly do a preamble to it, and then unedited video, and then like ending comments of my own. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing I wanted to do was put things in there that aren't my opinion, but are quotes from other well-known people. Mm-hmm. That other than that, I want to do it unedited. Are those okay for you as well?
I'm totally fine with it.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I think other than that, I wanted to be as respectful as I can of the 30 minutes because I know you're a busy man. And I think that there were some really good things that came out of here, some good information you passed to me that I really didn't know about. And mm-hmm. Sounds like with those districts, that's something that might be new to you. Not a real solution because I can tell you from my understanding, trustees would never pass something like that.
It'd be interesting to know if anybody has used that.
Yeah, I should probably do that research and see if there's
because that's been one of the things that I've found. Like when somebody presents a new idea to me, and then maybe it's a service initiative, or somebody says, "Well, no, the law says you can do this. Have you tried doing this?" My first gut instinct is one: is it being done in the state of Ohio? Can I find something that shows me how it's working? Are there consequences? What's the pros and cons to it? You know, is there something I'm not thinking about? And that's just my natural course of leading the organization, is like really investigating before we pull the trigger, because too many times, you know, my career is pretty tenured here. Too many times a younger Doug may have jumped to that conclusion, like this change is always good change. But if you really have the ability to fall back on saying what works, what doesn't work, where else has it been tried, is it legal, is it done in the state of Ohio, do townships provide this, what's different about our situation, before you take that initiative and make that decision whether it's good or bad. It's not like we're always trying to set our service up based on the premium, because we could never offer the premium. And I'll give you an example. The standard from the National Fire Protection Association says you will have 23 to 26 firefighters on a single family dwelling. These houses out here, structure fire. And you will have those 26 on within 8 minutes or less. Well, do you know what the daily staffing is at Delhi?
16 a day? 12
we
a day?
Average 11. Our max is 14. So we don't even meet the standard equivalent of what NFPA says we should have on a structure fire. So what do? We backfill resources from other communities to support ours. We're pretty good at maintaining the EMS side of things. And meaning pretty good is it all has to do with timing. For instance, just in the short time we've been here, they're out on 3 runs. I do not have a fire apparatus available in Delhi Township right now. They're all on medical calls. So I don't have the luxury of staffing enough people on duty. If I've got 3 ambulances out, I likely can't put more than 2 or 3 people out on the next call. Whether they respond in an engine to a person having a heart attack and we wait for an ambulance to come from Green Township or Cheviot. I think people naturally assume we have the right staffing based on standards. We don't meet the standards, but we can provide the best service we can, both financially, by keeping that staffing level at what it is, until what happens. Maybe 20 years from now, we look at the run volume, and for whatever reason it continues to increase. We have to look at how many additional resources do we need to service that many more runs. So right now our benchmark is 4,500 runs. We were running with 14 people back in 2003 because I was on the department. We had that many people, but we were doing 2,000 less runs a year. Were the odds in our favor to properly mount a fire attack if we had a couple EMS runs? Yes. We just don't have that luxury anymore.
Okay.
So I think people were like, are you using your money efficiently? You know, because what do you want to look at is the productivity of the service that you're providing. In 4,500 runs, we're measuring up pretty good. When you start to see the response times decrease, means we need more resources to meet up with demand. It is a marketability. And we found the sweet spot. And I know that's one of those things where I would never tell anybody the fire service is cheap. Because I think as the fire chief, when I go negotiate a purchase or a piece of equipment, and you go to the same place and get a chainsaw, but the fire department goes and buys the same chainsaw, but because it says rescue or it says, you know, special service, I'm gonna pay an inflated cost for it. No ifs, ands, or buts. That is just the general rule of when the fire department's paying for it, we get gouged more than the average citizen for the same thing, basically.
I don't know if you made this point, but I'd be curious if you would agree with this. It goes toward your side, but the cooperative agreements we have with the surrounding fire departments, where we help them, they help us. It's my understanding that if our levy fails, it's never going to be perfect. We're never going to give them, say, the exact same amount of services that they gave us. You can't.
Yeah.
But sometimes what happens is some folks in some areas, like let's just say Delhi, start thinking like me more, and we turn the levy down. And then you ask for it again because you always come back again when it gets turned down. We turn it down, turn it down, turn it down. And what happens is, I'm going to guess that Delhi's probably, I don't know. But what happens, I think, is that we start being less of a backup resource for the surrounding departments. And they start questioning, and if they have citizens like me that found out that, they start saying, why are we providing so much service to that township on our tax dollars?
They did say that.
And what eventually will happen one of the options that will happen is that they can start billing us. If you want our backup, we're going to give you roughly, we figured out whatever, 100 hours. We're going to give that 100 hours back to you.
Right now.
But now we're going to have to bill you on top of that.
Right now, if I go do a mutual aid operations in another community and it exceeds 8 hours, I can charge.
Okay, so that's already a mechanism
It's already
in
a
place.
mechanism that's in there. So it's that 8-hour cap, and it's already a contractual agreement between mutual aid companies. If Green Township transports you as a tax-paying resident in Delhi, they bill you EMS-wise the same way we do. I go there, I'm going to bill them the same way. But if it's the city of Cincinnati, we don't have that contractual agreement. If Cincinnati comes here, because I have nobody else in the county to provide EMS, they will bill you. Some agencies send you to collections.
Have you done any research on, I guess another option that I don't think I heard come out of government, I just had to find it on my own research. And again, I don't personally think this is a good idea. I think it's probably a bad idea, but I haven't done the research. I'd be curious if you've done any looking into it. Is an idea that we could combine fire departments, not with a cooperative agreement, but combine them under the same leadership across counties. You've looked into that, and you're in agreement that that's not a real solution?
I
have
been
considering?
a long proponent on a lot of the problems that all of our communities face outside the city of Cincinnati. So we're looking at 26 fire departments in Hamilton County that are not part of the city of Cincinnati. I think you would probably venture to get maybe over half of the fire administration would agree that the most cost-effective way to do it would have a county agency.
Okay, so you are
They
for
would
that.
all, absolutely.
How far are we into getting there?
I don't think
Early
Ohio
phases.
law is currently able to establish it. So
I
if
believe
you want to
it
look
is.
at where it's effective, go look at the city of Indianapolis. It basically ran all the little township departments and all the little village departments around Indianapolis into one big metro department. They combined the city and the county. It's just the mechanism to do it and how to accomplish it. There's a couple things. Would you be, as a Delhi resident, paying whatever base county tax, base that you would pay? Would you have a problem if your ambulance was coming from Amberley Village because that just happened to be the next ambulance available? It's not to say that in a county government, Delhi would have 3 fire stations.
What I'd say is that I've researched at a high level that there are challenges to it that with limited research I did, I would lean against it, but you're closer to it, and I'll be here with you if we ever go down that route.
Florida, Broward County Fire Department, the Metro-Dade Fire Department, they have county systems. I'm not opposed to them. I mean, they are cost effective, but the service does kind of suffer in many respects. So if you know what you have, it does change. And I would assume that if we ever went to a county government, Delhi would not be represented with 3 stations in our jurisdiction. 2, maybe 1. And then the next closest might be Dent, Green Township. But we wouldn't be Delhi and Green Township. We'd be county.
Gotcha.
Hamilton County. So there are other ways to look at it. City of Harrison, their fire department's a fire district.
Okay.
They cover both the Harrison Township and the city of Harrison, and they collectively merged their taxing district so that they can provide services. I think Harrison Township, I don't know the details if they're taxed directly or if the township trustees in Harrison just pay a check to the fire department to cover their fire response in their jurisdiction. So there's a number of opportunities out there. Municipalities, when people lose jobs and we start to see a recession in an area, particularly like with COVID, cities get hit first because property taxes don't necessarily drop right away when there's a major economic, hit. What gets hit first is people don't have jobs. They don't have income. During COVID, a lot of people didn't work in the city. They worked from home. They were no longer collecting taxes for things in the city.
When you mentioned COVID, I'm about to get a flashback.
No PTSD. I didn't like serving during COVID any more than anybody else.
Sure you didn't.
But when you have that change, the city gets hit first. And then what do they have in terms of their funding options? They have to attract business because that brings in income and stuff like that. And I think that just shows the vulnerability the townships have. If they only have one taxing mechanism, a lot of people tell me that they are very supportive of the fire department. And I think collectively as a community, they're very appreciative of the service that we're providing.
More than most places.
Yeah, I don't think that's the argument. And that's not even the case I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
If a person told me I can't support your additional funds because I don't like the service I'm getting, that would hurt more than a person saying I can't support your additional funds because I can't afford it. I am already, I like you would use the excuses like I gotta put food on the table and stuff like that. I don't have any moral judgment against that at all. But if you called me, I'm coming.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So I think The service
I
doesn't
almost
go
get the- I
away.
almost
It
get
just
the-
becomes harder to provide it with less people. That's the core of how the service is
I almost
provided.
get the feeling that Doug has so much integrity that if I was able to opt out of your services and I called you,
I still come.
that you would still come.
I would.
But what if I said, I want all your people to still come when I call you? Some of them are going to say, nah, man, I don't get paid for that.
That's not these people.
See? So we can't do it to you all, but you all can force us to pay for stuff we don't want. But what I want to do now, if I could, because I do want to recognize our time, and I
Yeah.
didn't look, but I know we're way over,
Yeah.
is I want to make a quick statement or two,
Okay.
and then I want you to have the last word for any closing statements
Absolutely.
you want to make. And so you mentioned earlier, it sounded like you are open to getting more information about the ability within Ohio law for an area to be redistricted and up out of a tax levy. And I apologize. I got 2 hours sleep last night doing accountability all last night. And I thought I brought it with me, but I didn't. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to do that research that you said you want. Your Canada and all that. You do good research, so I know you do more onto that. And I'll give you the ORC. I'll see if there's some case studies that can either back it up or shoot it down.
Yeah.
Because that's where my real interest is. Because I've come to have some certain passions, and safety has where I've evolved into. Kid safety now is what I'm working on. But in this context, it's about slave labor. I'm very against slave labor. That said, the last thing I want to say, and then give you time, is I just want to thank you again at the ending. I want to thank the trustees that are out there. I thought about maybe having this kind of conversation with one of the trustees. Also, what I'm going to do is after this, I'm going to go in the other area. There's a bunch of things we didn't have time to go through.
Mm-hmm. You can circle back.
I wanted to give you the respect of being able to say everything you want to articulate. So what I'll do is I'll just read it into the video.
Mm-hmm.
Be considered part of our unedited video. And with that, thanks, Doug. And last words to you, my man.
No, I want to stand on the fact that I tell a brand new person walking in off the street that wants to join the fire department, welcome to Delhi Township. We don't have engine numbers on our patch. We don't have unit day numbers on our patch. We don't have union numbers on our patch. We represent one thing, and it's on our patch, Delhi Township. And I say, you will not, trust me, because I have worked for cities, other townships, districts, and in all those places, I have never found a place that supports their police and fire as much as Delhi Township.
Amen.
And I said, when you mature in your career, wherever you decide to go, I hope you look back on your time here realizing how much you're supported, how much these folks really appreciate the effort you put in to providing that service, and they're worth it. That bar none, they're worth it. So it's not an argument about finances. It's not an argument about cost and expenses. I'm already trying to drive the chain of keeping costs low so that I don't have to pass those on to the taxpayer. I'm already on your side. When I'm looking at the challenges of how do I maintain this beautiful thing that we've got going, this collective service that doesn't care who you are or when you call or where you live, what part of the township, what you're calling about, that everybody gets the same thing, the same standard across the board, no matter who you are and how you vote, no matter who you are, where you live in Delhi Township, you're getting the same thing. And I think key to that is recognizing that just like the taxpayer, we're seeing the utility increases, we're seeing the fuel cost increases, those things are being pushed on us. It's not like I can say, well, let's not respond to like 25% of our EMS calls so I can keep fuel costs down. We still have to respond. We still have to transport to the hospital of choice. There's things that in that service just come with that factor. And if the people that are making this decision on May 5th understand that it's not us imparting some grandiose thing, we're gonna do anything, we're not buying a helicopter, we're not changing the way we do our service, but we're gonna provide the same great care. I have no argument for how they choose to vote. That is not my point.
Yep.
Have the right information. Be able to filter through some of the garbage that's out there, because I know some people just, they can say something to the effect of, oh, I know what'll save you money, X, Y, and Z. And it's food for thought. It's not, there's no reality in it. So I appreciate it. If you want to go look
Insurance
at the fire
company
district.
might be something. Of the things I'm most interested coming out, where you can maybe do a little homework and come back to me when I'm doing my homework. Whenever you get time, and totally optional, is I'd like to know more about the moral decision and the backing and reasoning around we don't collect our money that's owed to us from insurance companies.
You mean?
I don't need to.
You mean
go in
the
there,
reason why we don't bill the taxpayer more than what their insurance company pays us?
Oh, I thought we didn't collect from the insurance company.
No,
we
every
don't go after the
insurance,
taxpayer.
we do not go after the taxpayer. So, I'll leave you with this, because this is the part you need to understand. I respond to Rich Gage's house. He is transported to a hospital. I send your insurance company X a $300 bill for the transport.
No, you're right. I understand what
The
you're saying.
insurance company says you get $200. That $100 that's not paid by your insurance company is not coming to you. It's written off.
I just realized the problem is more so that what we do is we apply this socialist philosophy value where we end up paying more as a taxpayer for the least responsible civilian that doesn't have insurance. That's who benefits the most. The one that didn't get the insurance, that can, instead of buying insurance, I was one of these people. Instead of that, I decided to keep that money, take the big risk in life, and invest and save it so I could retire earlier. And while I'm doing that, somebody out there is paying for insurance money. But when it comes to those fire department services, they got to not only pay for that insurance money, but now they got to pay. They, in essence, got to pay to service me because I made a bad decision not to get insurance. And that's just an example. I'm being bad because I'm breaking my own rule. Maybe a good place to end, if you're closing it, is on the agreement that we both agree that everybody should get out there and vote if you're legally able to.
Absolutely.
Common ground.
Absolutely. Yep. Take advantage. It's a right that we cherish, and for folks not to use that right, that's tough.
This will
As a
sound
public
crazy.
employee.
This sound crazy. But I always vote up here at the retirement center. And I just do it on last minute, last day, and I do all my research. I go up a lot of times. That's the way it goes. And when I got a restraining order from Oak Hills Local School District based on deceit and things like that, ultimately dropped after I threatened their lawyer, 2 weeks after I threatened their lawyer with a possible bar ethics violation submission, which I'm now considering doing something similar to the Delhi lawyer. They dropped it. But I wasn't able to go up and vote because of the restraining order. And I cried about that. It's that important to me that I shed tear. And I don't shed tear a lot. Since I started doing government accountability, I shed tear, a lot of tears. And it is just a little odd that I shed tears. And then what I went and did is I went back to him and said, because you've done cost me my ability to vote, I now also need these things for the deal we're trying to strike. But I appreciate your time.
No.
Sometimes I try to end it on time and stuff, but I always need assistance with that.
I wholeheartedly support what you're trying to do.
Thanks, Doug.
I may not agree with you, but you wouldn't know that we can't have reasonable dialogue over it. I think that's the long point of where I'm coming from. Is I am one of the fortunate people that found a job that I can sleep at night. I can put my head down and know I did the best I possibly could throughout my entire career. Not everybody can say that. And I think, honest to goodness, that's where I lead from. That's what I try to impart on the people that work in this organization, to realize that it took a long time to get it like this. Don't blow it. You know, the fire service is over 200 years old. Just in Delhi, it's over 90.
Wow.
And you think about that, we've been providing a good service and a supportive service. And I think generally we never want to look like we're taking advantage of it. because there's no advantage to be won as a public servant.
Y'all even provide services, like I said, with making the analogy, Doug would come running even if I didn't pay his seat.
Absolutely.
And I even said, all your workers won't do that. But the matter of the fact is, and they probably got paid for this, but I used to rent my house out, and my roommate had a cat that got stuck in the chimney. She didn't know what to do. Fire department came. You didn't have to do any of this.
Mm-hmm.
You came in, I'll loosely say you saved the cat's life. You did minimal damage. Y'all took the time so that you didn't just go in there wrecking ball and get the cat. And it's really my experience, and y'all were really nice. Y'all were coordinating with me on the phone and stuff. I think y'all need my approval. And you know, that I think that's a norm in Delhi with y'all. You go above and beyond. And so yeah, I knew I would never win the argument or the debate arguing the numbers or anything like that, because Doug keeps it real, and I try and keep it real as well.
Good.
And I think, yeah, I'm gonna stop myself, because when I can, I need to. Thanks, Doug. Anything else you want to say?
No, thank you.
You're
for your
awesome.
time.
If you know this John in by chance, or
I
this
believe
guy
so.
that's right here,
Yeah.
I want to ask him a personal favor. There's one.
Got a second? Yeah. Rich wants to ask you a personal favor, he said.
Hey, how you doing? I just happened by your office, and I totally understand if you say you know sweat or anything.
Yeah.
But I thought you'd have some of the coolest, almost like a mini museum in a way. And I'm wondering if I could just take 10 seconds or 20 seconds just to zoom around it.
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay, I'll get my camera, and if anything you need to hide or anything. So I'm gonna go in here. This is John Helms, sorry.
Yeah.
He's the assistant fire chief. He's a good guy. I think I had one run-in where we had a little disagreement. I'm not sure if it was even you, but
I don't think we've ever had it.
I probably got you confused with someone else. But I remember a lot of times you're really always nice to me and provide good services. But you have an amazing, like I said, it's almost a mini museum in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I just captured some patches of the police department that were pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
Those are all the Delhis in the country that I can get.
really?
Yeah, in Delhi, Canada. So that's where I collected those and put those up there.
Wow, that's a cool collection. Are
Yeah.
those all your hats throughout your career?
No.
No.
Those are just ones I picked up at flea markets and stuff like that. The only one is the yellow one was mine. That was my lieutenant's hat or helmet.
I don't want to necessarily catch your kids or anything. Is there anything else in here that you would put a story behind it, or anything special like those patches?
Not really. I mean, just little stuff to collect here and there.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Yeah.
I'll take the knuckles.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll do the knuckles, Doug. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
And
Not a problem.
I'm not going to try and do a lot of follow-up with you or try and meet with. Okay, so I thought that went well. I wasn't sure. I was a little nervous, frankly, because I did a lot of last-minute research and I'm living on fumes here.